Chapter 61 To Shake Heaven and Earth. Wade quickly realized that Sylvia was genuinely ready to kill. He and his men stood frozen and did not dare to act rashly. Half a minute later, Caspian finally spoke up. "What did you find? Is there complete footage of the murder?" "There is," answered Sylvia. Willow was surprised by how efficiently Sylvia had accomplished her given task. She had expected that the police would have already hidden or deleted any evidence from the public eye. "Show me," said Caspian. Sylvia hesitated for a moment. "Are you sure, Caspian? It's brutal. I'm not repeating myself." "Yes, sir." Sylvia returned to the SUV and retrieved a tablet for Caspian. Willow was once again both surprised and confused with how well-mannered Sylvia was in regard to Caspian. She wondered why the supposed senior officer Caspian worked under was treating him with the utmost respect. Sylvia opened up the footage on the tablet and handed it over to Caspian. The footage showed Lilith facing off against the flying dragons with valor. What he began to witness also matched Willow's description of the incident. Lilith would meet her demise as she delayed the flying dragons in order to have Willow bring Priscilla to safety. The latter half of the footage was brutal, as Sylvia had described. The flying dragons surrounded their victim, tackled Lilith onto the ground, and repeatedly stabbed her along with swings to her head. Derek would then appear and throw a few kicks to the dying Lilith. Quentin himself also made an appearance to deliver the final blow with a dagger to Lilith's abdomen. Lilith lay in a pool of her own blood, covered in wounds and bleeding profusely. Derek and the flying dragons showed no sign of mercy or regret as they left the crime scene. By the time Willow made her return, Lilith had already stopped breathing. Caspian was angered beyond reason upon witnessing that his mother had died with such tragic brutality. The perpetrators went above and beyond with their heinous acts even after Lilith was struck down with the knives. Caspian could no longer suppress the anger boiling within his body. He clenched his fists and roared at the sky, parting the clouds with his anger and frustration alone. The wind began to blow heavily as the clouds began to gather once more. The clear night sky with bright stars instantly became darkened. The flying dragons were startled by the sudden change of weather. Soon after, a lightning bolt parted the sky before its rumbling reverberated like an omen across the cemetery. Rain began to fall, as if it was Caspian's tears that accompanied his thunderous anger. His roar had just shifted the weather. Wade was dumbfounded at witnessing such an inexplicable event. He took a few steps back subconsciously out of fear of the man standing before him. The rest of his men were also terrified by Caspian's presence. They could only wonder if it was mere coincidence that the weather shifted, or that the man before them could shake heaven and earth itself. The old grave keeper at the entrance of the cemetery muttered to himself as he witnessed the scene unfolding before his eyes. Legends talked about a mighty general that would emerge from South Lake City. Could this young man be the rumored god of war? Willow, too, was dumbfounded by how Caspian's roar managed to disrupt the weather. As for Sylvia, her plentiful years as his subordinate never prepared her for the sight before. She realized that Caspian was in fact enraged beyond R. Caspian's foster mother was the most cherished person in his life. To see her murderers walking freely in the open, he was understandably furious. Sylvia began to wonder if Caspian's anger would even induce an emergency for South Lake City. The flying dragons would be meeting their end. They would face the wrath of the Diateranian god of war for murdering his mother. In the midst of the heavy rain, Caspian's gaze turned murderous as he stared at Wade and his men. He stared daggers into the men before him, and they quite figuratively felt it in their bodies. Wade subconsciously took a few more steps back as it was the first time he was faced with such an imposing opponent. The Flying Dragon Gang members' instincts tell them to flee the scene, but their bodies can only freeze up in a place out of fear of meeting Caspian's wrath. "Caspian, shall we begin?" asked Sylvia. She was ready to clean up the scum at a moment's notice. "Keep an eye on their numbers, and make sure that not a single one of them manages to escape," answered Caspian. Sylvia continued, What are we waiting for? They will die in due time. But first, I need to have a word with my mother. Caspian crouched down before Lilith's tombstone. Wade and his men were taken aback by Caspian's actions right after that display of power. They came to the conclusion that Caspian was a good, nothing that just pretended to be tough thanks to the sudden shift in weather. Caspian kneeled down and started to beg for forgiveness. "I'm sorry I'm late, Mom." He lifted and slammed his head to the ground 3 times, with each strike seemingly causing the ground around them to tremble. "I have failed you. I never managed to repay your kindness and love in time. I have failed you as your son." Caspian continued slamming his head against the ground. "Mom, I wanted to tell you about the great victory over the South Eridlands. Invaders from Tigra were annihilated. And they had signed a deal in our favor to never attempt war with Diatoran ever again." He told Lilith about his deep gratitude, but it was too late. "I wouldn't have made it this far without you. Mom, I will avenge you. I swear, your killers will pay tenfold for what they have done to you." Caspian continued slamming his head. The usually stoic Caspian was now sobbing uncontrollably. It had been easier for him to bleed than to shed tears, but it was apparent that he could still cry his heart out for his loved ones. Sylvia had never seen Caspian like this before. The powerful Lord Caspian now resembled a lonely child. Wade, however, was creeped out by Caspian's behavior. He had seen his fair share of mental breakdowns throughout his line of work. He remained steadfast and composed himself. "What the fuck are you doing? Stop wasting our time. Either fight us or get lost." Willow lifted Caspian up by his arm, as she began to notice his forehead bleeding. "Get up, Caspian. Mom won't come back to us anymore. It doesn't matter how much you cry about it. We've tried. We should avenge her." As she finished her words, Caspian swiftly stood back up. He had a sudden shift in demeanor. The previously sobbing man had disappeared within seconds, replaced by a monster with nothing but killing intent. Sylvia quickly realized the show was about to begin. "Caspian, let us avenge your mother." Chapter 62, An Eye for an Eye. "Don't interfere." Caspian waved his hand at Sylvia. "Caspian, there's no need for you to personally deal with these scumbags." He coldly explained, "I will avenge my mother with my own 2 hands." "Yes, sir." Sylvia obediently backed down. Willow was confused by their exchange. She felt as if they were seeing the opponents as paper dolls that could be easily dispatched. She had heard that Caspian was quite the fighter, but the scale of the current fight was not realistic to be fought alone. Besides, members of the Flying Dragon were notorious for being brutal, and fighting any one of their members was akin to declaring war against the entire gang. She quickly intercepted him. "Calm down, Caspian. There has to be some other way. You don't have to fight them. The Flying Dragons aren't someone we can mess with. An eye for an eye, Willow. You don't have to trouble yourself with this matter." The usually obedient Caspian was not going to be held back by Willow from avenging his mother. She continued, "Maybe you have some tricks up your sleeves, but they have the advantage in numbers. And killing any of them would have the police looking for you. Calm down, Caspian." Caspian explained, "I never wavered even against Tigra's elites, let alone against these hooligans. As for the police, I will deal with them later. You should close your eyes. I don't want you to have nightmares of this day for the rest of your life." She was annoyed by how he seemed to ignore her words. "Can you stop fucking pretending to be powerful? If you just want to die, I'm not going to stop you further." He, too, was annoyed that Willow seemed to not be following his instructions. "Sylvia, I'll leave Willow to you. I'll hold you responsible if anything happens to her." "Yes, sir." Sylvia swiftly moved to Willow's side. She would ensure that no one would manage to harm Willow throughout the upcoming battle. "Let's go, boys." Off with his head, Wade began his battle cry. Dozens of the members of the Flying Dragons brandished their weapons and rushed toward Caspian on Wade's mark. Caspian calmly looked down upon the men coming after him as if he were looking at pitiful ants. He could exterminate the pests with just a single strike, but he decided to limit his own strength So as to not give Willow too much of a shock, Caspian headed into the battlefield with nothing but his fists. Before him were his mother's killers, and he decided that he would not give them an easy way out. He would ruthlessly torture them and brand the fear of impending death into their minds. Caspian skillfully and instantly weaved through the men like the lightning that he had manifested throughout the skies. The blood of his enemies began to mix with the falling rain, as cries of pain rang out across the cemetery. Puddles of rainwater soon became puddles of blood. His intent to kill these men was only strengthened as he thought about Lilith's tragic final moments. In not even a minute, Caspian had taken down all 20 or so men of the flying dragons. He had dismembered every single one of his enemies, and their limbs littered the floor. Within his hand was a knife that he had taken from his opponents. He wanted to return the favor to the killers that had stabbed Lilith to death. The floor of the cemetery was now painted bright red with blood. Willow was horrified to find all the flying dragon's men struggling with their limbs separated all within a span of 20 or so seconds. She could only wonder how Caspian managed to achieve such a feat. She never managed to catch what happened other than Caspian's figure weaving through the enemies. She still could not come to believe that the battle had ended as soon as it began. Unbeknownst to her, Caspian had not even unleashed his full might, or the battle would have been over even sooner. Wade stood at the side as he wondered if he had been imagining things. He rubbed his eyes to confirm the bloodshed before him again and again, as fear started seeping into his mind. 20 of his own men were taken out by Caspian in an instant. Sylvia was not fazed by the massacre, as it was nothing compared to the actual battlefields she had been used to. Caspian slowly approached Wade, with his knife still in hand. Wade's legs went limp as he crumbled onto the ground. He was terrified to meet his impending doom. "Please don't kill me. Spare me, please. I beg of you." He knelt down in front of Caspian and began to beg for his life. He had never expected Caspian to be so powerful. "It's too late. Your death was already decided the moment you killed my mother," Caspian coldly explained. "I was wrong. Please, we can talk this over, okay? I'm quite high up in the ranks. As long as you spare me, I can help negotiate your freedom. Your rank won't matter soon. I will exterminate all of the flying dragons in due time. Then what about the police? They're going to arrest you for being a serial killer." Wade tried his best to come up with excuses just to extend his lifespan. "The police will be bowing their heads before me," explained Caspian. Wade was left speechless as he was at his wit's end. He did not expect Caspian to be even more ruthless than the flying dragons. He realized Caspian was an insane murderer who was not even afraid of the police. An eye for an eye. Scum. "This is for my mother. Stop. I'm not behind any of this. I only kicked her twice because of peer pressure. The ones behind all of this are Mr. Lane and Mr. York." Wade cried out in anguish for keeping himself alive. "Nonsense. I will have my revenge." Caspian continued brandishing his weapon. Wade was so terrified that he peed himself while trembling all over the ground, unable to make out a sensible word. Caspian was satisfied to find his enemy cowering in fear before him. He had wanted to torture and break their spirits before slowly succumbing to death. As he was about to swing down his knife, Willow's voice from behind halted him in his tracks. "Stop." Wade turned toward Willow, as if latching onto a glimmer of hope. "Why stop me? These pieces of trash must die," explained Caspian. Willow was annoyed. "You're crazy. It feels good to get your revenge. Get your revenge. But have you thought about the consequences?" Caspian rolled his eyes. He did not see how the Diaturanian god of war, who had the golden set of armor given to him by the king that signified immense authority, would even face consequences for cleaning up these low-life gangsters for the public. He's right. Killing him would only incur the flying dragon's wrath, and the police would be on their side as well. You will be arrested and made to stand trial. Is it really worth it? What about me, Caspian? What should I do if you were to be arrested? Willow tried her best to persuade the still vengeful Caspian. "Fine then. I'll spare their lives." He withdrew from killing Wade only for Willow's sake. Wade took a long sigh of relief upon realizing his life had been spared. Suddenly, Caspian turned to Sylvia and said, "You're a general officer, aren't you? I'm sure you won't get into trouble for enforcing safety in South Lake City in the police's stead." Wade lost his shit once more. He realized that his momentary relief was just a false alarm. He had only realized that Sylvia was a general officer for the military. Willow, too, had never expected Caspian to go through such a loophole. Sylvia had been holding herself back in order to protect Willow as she was ordered. She was nothing but delighted to finally be given some action. "Yes, sir." She took over the knife from Caspian. Caspian laid down his orders for his subordinate. "Take your time, but let me bring Willow back into the car first. You have 15 minutes. Make it a show." Chapter 63, A Coffin as a Gift. "Yes, sir." Sylvia understood that Caspian wanted to keep Willow away from witnessing the horrors that were to come. Caspian turned toward the dazed Willow. "Willow, let us go." She was still afraid that the flying dragons would enact revenge upon them. "Why did you just go back on your own words? You just said that you would let him go." "I did. I've let them go, as I promised. What happens next has nothing to do with us." Willow was left utterly speechless. She would not dare to intercept a general officer like Sylvia either. Not even the police would be able to do anything about Sylvia thanks to her title. "Let's go." Caspian brought Willow back to the car. As the couple left, Willow realized she was slightly delighted, as she had also wanted to enact revenge on the gangsters that killed Lilith. She was just worried that Caspian's actions would bring in further troubles. With Sylvia now at the helm, she could not care less about what happened to their enemies. She followed Caspian back onto the Rolls-Royce. However, she was actually interested in watching what Sylvia was going to do. Caspian calmly said, "Don't look outside." She could not help but feel that Caspian had completely changed as a person, and she felt as if she was meeting a stranger once more. He no longer resembled his good, nothing self. The current Caspian seemed hostile at times, and his eyes reflected purpose and dedication. To Willow, he really seemed like a different person. Willow could only wonder if Lilith's death had pushed him off the edge. She also wondered about how a general officer like Sylvia was treating Caspian with the utmost respect and heeded all his orders. Perhaps Caspian had made great achievements during the war in the South Eridlands, and was promoted even beyond Sylvia. She could not yet confirm her suspicions, but she was proud and delighted to imagine that Caspian had become a hero of Diatoran. After confirming that the couple had left, Sylvia began her session with Wade. Wade was trembling with fear as he stared at Sylvia. What the fuck are you going to do to me? Look at your own men. Broken limbs scattered everywhere. Now look at you. You seem as healthy as one can be. Don't you think it's only fair to share the pain of your brethren in battle?" Sylvia wished that she could have more than just Wade to deal with. Before Wade could realize his fate, Sylvia had already decided her first course of action. With a flash of the knife, Wade's left arm was cleanly detached from his body. Oh my fucking God. Noticing blood pouring out of his body, Wade let out a blood-curdling screech. None of his men would arrive to help him, as they also lay limbless around him. Wade continued to beg for mercy. "Please, let me go. I've learned my lesson. Please. You've already taken one of my arms. Please, spare me." Madame Ziegler was a kind-hearted person, and she ended up dying tragically in the hands of you scumbags. She suffered so many wounds and beatings as she died. You will have to suffer tenfold in order to make it even. Sylvia finished her speech and began bringing the stage play to a climax. Within the Rolls-Royce, the couple could not hear a single thing happening outside. Willow, however, let her curiosity get the better of her. She peeked at the rearview mirror and happened to witness a glimpse of Sylvia's performance. She subconsciously trembled and covered her eyes, no longer interested in witnessing the bloodbath. Caspian sighed. "I told you not to look, didn't I? Why does Sylvia seem to respect you so much?" asked Willow. "We're comrades in arms. as well as good friends. The sudden downpour before the fight had completely soaked Willow. At the moment, her beautiful figure was on full display, enhanced by her glittery wet skin. Caspian, however, was not in the mood to enjoy the view. He made his return from war only to find his foster mother murdered in cold blood. All he could think of was revenge. 10 minutes later, the skies gradually cleared up. Sylvia approaches the car. Caspian then rolled down the windows. "Caspian, it's done." Caspian nodded and turned to Willow. "Willow, you should head back for now. I still have something to do." Sylvia seemed eerily calm, as if nothing had just happened before her arrival. Her clothes were clean without a single drop of blood, despite having just returned from performing an execution. Willow sheepishly asked, "Where are you going?" She was still terrified from the bloodbath. "Don't worry about me. You should go home, freshen up, and have a rest." Caspian promptly got out of the car after replying. Caspian's cold and dismissive tone left Willow without the courage to question him further. She then started the car and drove home. After Willow had left, Caspian finally got back into the SUV with Sylvia. "Where are we heading to, Caspian?" "To the York residence." "Yes, sir." Sylvia was also excited after knowing about his next target. Revenge was a dish best served cold. "But before that, we need to prepare some gifts for the party. Let's head to the coffin shop." Sylvia asked, "What are we heading there for?" "For a coffin, of course. It would be the perfect gift for that Mrs. York Sr. of theirs. It would be rude if we entered the party without a gift in hand." Caspian was ready to teach the York family a lesson. Sylvia smiled and replied, "That truly would be the most appropriate gift for the occasion." Over at the York residence, the house was thoroughly decorated with beautiful lighting to celebrate Nadia's 80th birthday. Nadia had assumed the role of the matriarch of the York family ever since her husband had passed away. The Yorks were one of the most affluent and powerful families within South Lake City. The birthday party for the matriarch involved many other powerful men and women within the political and business world paying their respects with gifts. The brightly lit York residence was almost littered to the brim with various gifts to curry favor with the Yorks. Nadia looked at the fully seated hall filled with esteemed guests, and noticed that Derek had an empty seat by his side. "Derek, you've said that you will be bringing your girlfriend with you today. Where is she? Is she all right?" "She will be here soon," Derek answered with certainty. Chapter 64. A coffin for you. "Just who is this girlfriend of yours?" asked Nadia. Derek smugly answered, "The #1 beauty of South Lake City herself, Willow Stewart." Nadia was surprised. "Willow? I thought she had just recently gotten married. How did she become your girlfriend all of a sudden?" She wondered why her grandson would attempt to court an already married woman. "She's married, correct. But she's exactly my type. Nobody ever said you can't score a goal with the goalkeeper around. You know what I mean. Don't you realize it's disrespectful to court another man's woman? Your actions could bring shame to our family if the public learned about this. Why choose her specifically? You have plenty of options to pick from." "It's love at first sight, Grandma. I've been in love with her ever since I saw her. I can't help but think about her every single day." "Oh dear. Do whatever you want, but do not ever marry her. I will not tolerate having the name of our York family be tainted by you courting another man's wife. Once you've had your fun and you've gotten bored of your toy, cut her off from ever contacting us ever again," declared Nadia. She would not risk having the York family's reputation be tainted by the news that her grandson's wife was a married woman who was forcibly taken away from her husband. "I understand, Grandma." Derek nodded. Derek was the eldest grandson to Nadia, whom she had spoiled rotten, causing him to become the arrogant man he was. Willow was the most beautiful woman Derek had ever laid eyes on. He thought that having her by his side for the birthday party would not only enhance the image of the York family but also cause his peers within the affluent world to be jay. He wanted to acquire Willow by any means necessary. Meanwhile, heavy footsteps from outside the party were approaching fast, as if spelling out an omen. Guests present at the party all felt uneasy from the footsteps and looked outside of the hall. They would see a man and a woman aggressively closing into the party hall with their right arms raised high above their head, carrying a coffin. Nadia's expression turned for the worse when she saw the uninvited guests showing up with a coffin. The entire hall became dead silent from the shock of the sudden event. Everyone wondered what they were trying to convey by displaying a coffin in front of Nadia during her birthday party. "Stop right there. Who are you? You've probably come to the wrong place," Derek's father, Samuel York, shouted at the duo. He was furious after being disrespected by such a gesture in relation to his mother's 80th birthday. Guests at the party began their discussion after Samuel's words confirmed their suspicions that the duo were not esteemed guests. How do they mess up so badly at their work? Oh gods. It's such a disrespectful act to bring a coffin to a senior's birthday party. The two of them are going to be fired after this. Ha ha ha. I think the York family might just erase them from existence instead, after such an indecent and offensive display. This has to be what they call a bad omen, right? The duo was none other than Caspian and Sylvia. No one without the party hall managed to recognize Caspian, except for Benedict, who was defeated by Caspian. Esteemed guests invited to join the birthday party only extended to the aristocracy of South Lake City. Caspian and Sylvia were not on the list, although Caspian's wedding from last month had also similarly shaken up the political and business world of South Lake City. Most of the current guests were never invited to his wedding. It was only natural that no one could manage to recognize the duo. Benedict and his men subconsciously took a few steps back after recognizing Caspian. They still remembered the fear Caspian had instilled in them. "We're right where we're supposed to be. Congratulations to Mrs. York Sr. for her 80th birthday. And this coffin is our gift," Caspian exclaimed. Everyone present was shocked by their audacity to present a senior with a coffin as a gift. "Who sent you? What do you want?" Samuel was furious. He would have allowed the two of them to leave if they had made a genuine mistake, but now he realized that they were doing this on purpose. "I am Caspian Lynch, foster son of Lilith Ziegler. Today I bring a fitting gift for Mrs. York Sr., a coffin," Caspian calmly exclaimed. The crowd finally recognized the man before them as the good-for-nothing husband of Willow. Although none of them would know about his true identity, they still recognized him as the husband of the most beautiful woman in South Lake City. Caspian's name was also publicly known thanks to the wedding held a month prior. Derek was surprised to find Caspian making an appearance right within his home. He was puzzled as to why Caspian could manage to show up at the party unharmed, as he recalled sending Quentin to deal with Caspian. "Who is this Lilith Ziegler that you speak of?" Samuel asked with annoyance. "She is my foster mother," answered Caspian. Nadia, Samuel, and even his wife, Dawn, along with several other members of the York family, reacted to the name Lilith. Although Lilith was not a prominent figure within South Lake City, the Yorks remembered her name. After Derek and the Flying Dragons murdered Lilith, the York family used their wealth and power to ensure that news of the incident never made it into the public eye. If not for the incident, they would never have known who Lilith was. Guests at the birthday party, however, were left confused as they had never heard of Lilith. "Who's that? Lilith? No idea. Never heard of her. This good-for-nothing is probably just looking for an early grave. I think we're in for a show. They're gonna get beaten up and thrown out of the party." Caspian and Sylvia had now reached the center of the banquet hall. "Sylvia!" shouted Caspian. The duo then threw the coffin in tandem, and it landed right in front of Nadia. "Our gift may not be as grand as the others. I only hope that you won't mind that." Nadia was angered beyond reason, but she still composed herself. She could tell that Caspian and the woman behind him were not ordinary folk. She reckoned that they must be here to cause a commotion. Nadia gracefully replied, "Ho ho, an old woman like me would have no use for such an exquisite gift. You may bring it back with you, young man. You might need it for yourself." Caspian coldly retorted, "We're young folks with our lives ahead of us. We won't be needing a coffin anytime soon. But as for you, You might require this gift more than you think, maybe even today. Think of this as a gift of convenience." Nadia was enraged. "What insolence! What are you implying? As the matriarch of the York family, do you condone your own grandson murdering my mother? I prepared this coffin for you. Say your prayers." Chapter 65. Anyone else? Caspian's words shocked the crowd to their core. They began to whisper and discuss what unspeakable acts the York had committed to attract such hate from Caspian. "What insolence! You barge into my house and spout nonsense. How dare you? Send the two of them out." Nadia roared with anger and annoyance. Several bodyguards appeared from the shadows and approached the duo. For a powerful family like the Yorks, they had specially trained individuals assigned as security personnel, each with their own specific skills. Derek finally had the courage to speak up after the bodyguards had appeared. He walked over, pointed straight at Caspian, and said, "Who the hell are you? What audacity! Do you dare give a coffin to my grandma as a gift? Guards, break their legs. We'll have them crawl out of here." Derek loved this feeling of being powerful. "So, you're Derek York?" asked Caspian. "Yours truly. I don't care who you are, but your funny jokes made against my family will be met with appropriate punishment." Derek stood before the family's bodyguards without a hint of fear. Suddenly, a slap reverberated across the party hall. Derek was sent sprawling to the ground. Derek's face was branded red with the shape of Caspian's hand. Caspian's slap was so sudden that everyone present was caught off guard. "Oh." By the time the crowd had realized what had happened, they collectively hissed out in pain for Derek. They could not believe that the eldest grandson of the York family was disrespected in full view of the public. Caspian proceeded to step onto Derek's chest. "You are the reason I'm here. I'm going to kill you. No, I'm going to butcher you like poultry." Derek proceeded to yell for help. "What are you guys standing around for? Fuck him up." The bodyguards were hesitant to make a move due to their benefactor being pinned on the ground by their target. Dawn was heartbroken to see her son being trampled on the ground. She wanted to check on Derek, but was repelled by Caspian's intense and murderous gaze. Samuel, too, was furious. He decided that the duo needed to be punished severely in order to retain the York family's image. "Guards, teach them a lesson and throw them out of here. You seem to be quite powerful. I'll allow you to land a few hits on me. Come on," one of the bodyguards said. He intended to distract Caspian for an instant so that he could move Derek out of danger. Sylvia spoke up in response to his provocation. "Forget it, you scum. You're not even worthy enough for Caspian to deal with. Come on now. I'll wipe the floor with all of you." The crowd never expected the beautiful-looking woman beside Caspian to be able to speak such harsh and arrogant words. "Cut the crap and get me out of here already. Beat them up and teach them a lesson." Derek was getting annoyed with how hesitant the bodyguards were being. The bodyguards then sprung into action and swarmed around Caspian. Sylvia stepped forward to fight them. A few thuds could be heard as several bodyguards were sent flying to the ground. They remained on the ground while holding onto their chests with pained expressions. The sudden shift of events left the crowd stunned. They could not believe that the bodyguards were instantly taken care of before they could even manage to land a hit on the duo. It was even more shocking for the Yorks themselves. They had known of their bodyguards' abilities for the longest time, and were shocked to find them easily defeated. And they were instantly defeated by a woman at that. The crowd could only wonder who the beautiful woman standing beside Caspian was. They surmised that Caspian would be a man of even greater strength if such a powerful woman was acting as his mere subordinate. "Anyone else wants to try fighting us?" Sylvia stretched out her hand and invited her challengers. She was also furious about the death of Lilith, and wanted to teach the York family a lesson. Nadia began to panic as she realized the duo had come prepared. "Bring us Mr. Seagull," Nadia whispered to the housekeeper beside her. "Yes, madam." The housekeeper hurriedly ran toward the back of the hall. Soon after, an elderly man in black robes appeared. "Mr. Seagull, if you would, please drive the two of them away from the party." Nadia respectfully requested the man's assistance. The man's name was Steve Siegel. He was an unparalleled fighter. He was so powerful Nadia treated him with nothing but respect. He was considered a guest of honor for the Yorks. Of course. Steve nodded in agreement and wasted no time. He walked toward the duo with a steady and confident pace. Steve walkies with an immense intention to harm another human being. Sylvia subconsciously frowned as she became wary of his presence. "Step back, Sylvia. Leave this to me," said Caspian. "There's no need to trouble you, Caspian. I can deal with him." Sylvia could tell that the elderly man was no ordinary fighter, but she was still confident in her abilities. "I went to have some fun, that's all." "Yes, sir." Sylvia nodded and took a few steps back. Caspian still had Derek pinned down on the floor as he calmly exclaimed, "Come on then. Show me what you've got." Steve carefully scanned Caspian from head to toe. Caspian seemed to be casually waiting for Steve to make a move without any attempts to defend himself, and yet, Steve could not find any openings whatsoever. Caspian's carefree attitude had made Steve hesitant to even test the waters. "What are you standing there for? Just beat him up." Derek began to panic as he wanted to get any as soon as possible. Derek was familiar with Steve's abilities and was confident that he could help. And with that, Steve made the first move. He started the fight with a simple jab. Caspian responded to Steve's simple attack with an attack of his own. The fists of the two men collided against one another and let out a loud boom. What followed suit, however, was the sound of bones cracking. Steve was sent flying from the impact, with his right arm bent into a strange shape. The crowd turned to Caspian and realized that he was not even fazed. Steve swiftly got back up on his feet. He began to panic, and his expression sank when he realized his right arm was distorted beyond recognition. His fist had turned into mush, with his bones sticking out of what once used to be his arm. The gory scene left the crowd shocked and rendered the entire hall silent. The York family's secret weapon was defeated by Caspian with just one punch alone. Steve could not believe that the prized fist of his was rendered useless in an instant. No one had expected the infamous good-for-nothing of Southlake City to be so powerful. Nadia, along with the rest of her family, was completely dumbfounded by the events unfolding before them. Is this the best the Yorks have to offer? He doesn't seem any different from the security guards patrolling the neighborhood. "Do you have any more tricks up your sleeves?" asked Caspian. No one had dared to speak up any longer. "If that's all, I shall now have Derek pay for all the sins he has committed." Chapter 66. Derek was broken. Derek was trembling with fear as he finally caught on to the situation. He pleaded for his life. "Please don't kill me, please. I'll give you whatever you want. If you want money, I'll give you as much as you'd like. Money is nothing but dirt to me. No amount of money would ever bring my mother back to life." Noticing that her son's life was in danger, Dawn started panicking and knelt down to beg for Derek's life. "Please, spare my child. When my wife begged like this for my mother's life, why did he not spare her?" Caspian's tone remained eerily calm. Dawn continued, "He has learned his lesson. Please, spare him. Give him another chance. Give us another chance as well to re-educate him. Derek's behavior as a spoiled brat stems from your pampering and failed education. He grew up to be selfish and capricious to his own wishes without a single shred of self-discipline." Caspian raised up his own foot and crushed it down between Derek's legs. Derek let out a blood-curdling scream before he fainted from shock. He would no longer be able to procreate. "Derek," Samuel shouted for his son, "you're insane. You're an evil man. I'll fucking kill you." Dawn was understandably enraged after witnessing her own son being denied from ever bearing his own kin. As Dawn rushed toward Caspian, a similar slap was branded onto her face. "Your son did not just kill my mother in cold blood. He also tried to kidnap my wife while I was out of town. I'm doing a public service by rendering him infertile. No longer will he have disgusting intentions and put innocent women in danger." The men among the crowd subconsciously protected their jewels out of instinct as they witnessed Caspian's actions. Nadia was distraught to see that her cherished grandson was involuntarily and forcefully sterilized. But there was nothing she could do about it. If even a fighter like Steve was defeated in an instant, she saw no one else who could possibly stand up against him. The crowd was now puzzled by how Caspian was so powerful, despite being just a simple soldier. They could only wonder if he was truly a simple soldier as the rumors would have them. Believe after witnessing his strength tonight. I will be holding a ceremony for my mother in 5 days, and your son will be the sacrifice, Caspian continued. Anyone that played a part in my mother's death will pay with their lives. I'm telling you now to give you a chance. You have 5 days. Caspian felt that killing Derek now would have been an easy way out for his target. He wanted Derek to suffer in tremendous pain for the next few days, before finally showing him hell. He would have Derek experience pain and fear beyond human imagination. The York family, however, caught on to the glimpse of hope after Caspian's declaration. They would have to attempt to turn the tables within the span of 5 days and have Caspian on the floor begging for mercy. They could not afford to waste even a single second for the next 5 days to come. Let's go, Sylvia. Caspian turned around and left the York residence. The bodyguards of the York family remained on the ground due to their injuries, and they would not have dared to stop the duo regardless. After Caspian and Sylvia had left, the York family called for an ambulance to send Derek and Steve to the hospital. The guests gradually left the party as they wanted no part in being caught in the crossfire between the York family and Caspian's battle. The birthday party for Nadia had now become a barren wasteland and ended abruptly beyond anyone's expectations. Caspian's display of strength had left the York family anxious. They could not afford to be idle if they were to survive the upcoming battle. Nadia had gathered the family for a meeting to discuss ways to deal with Caspian. On their way back, Sylvia asked, "Caspian, why didn't you just kill them right then and there? What's the point of giving them 5 days to prepare against you? Their death is only a matter of time. It would have been easy to kill Derek, but he doesn't deserve the sweet release of death. Not yet. I won't easily forgive him for killing my mother." "What should we do?" asked Sylvia. "I will torture them and let them experience the full extent of fear a human can bear before killing them off." "Understandable. What should we do next?" "I need you to investigate the connections that the York family currently has. We will not let anyone involved in my mother's death get away with it. One more thing, find out who is helping the Yorks in censoring the incident from public eyes." "Yes, sir," Caspian added. "One final thing, I need you to find out where Quentin is hiding. His days are numbered." "Yes, sir." Willow had already freshened up when Caspian came back home. She was finally relieved after seeing that Caspian made it back in one piece. "You're back." Noticing that Kate was missing, he asked, "Where's Mrs. Stewart?" "She's gone home to her old house. She said that she could not get used to living here." Caspian asked, "I'm sure our house would be way better than the old Stewart residence, though. She used to clamor about living with us, and now she has just moved back out all of a sudden." "Why?" "She said that she didn't want to affect our privacy." Willow was afraid of spilling the truth that Kate had driven Lilith out of the house on that night. Willow remembered how Caspian seemed like a stranger with his otherworldly and cold demeanor back at the cemetery. She surmised that he would not easily forgive Kate for her actions if he found out that Kate was partially responsible for Lilith's death. That's weird. So, she just became so understanding all of a sudden. Caspian understood Kate well. He remembered how Kate had forcefully moved into their house, and yet, she would now willingly leave on her own. Things just do not seem to add up for Caspian. Chapter 67, Setting the Trap. Maybe she thinks that this place isn't as comfortable as the Stewart residence. My dad and I have to work during the day, and she's all alone in the villa. It's empty, and she doesn't have anyone to talk to. Maybe she found it boring, so she went back on her own accord, Willow said. Although Willow was lying, she said it convincingly, her expression and heart rate staying the same the whole time. Hence, Caspian didn't question what Willow said. "What is it like working at South Lake Corporation?" Caspian asked. After the incident, I took a long leave of absence, Willow said with a sigh. It's better now. Now that you're back, my life can get back on track. Has the organization assigned you any work? Not yet. I just took a leave of absence to come back for a while. If anything comes up, I will need to leave, Caspian replied, while stroking Willow's hair indulgently. Why do you have to go back? Willow asked, a little confused. Diatora needs me, Caspian said, grinning. Yeah, go on, keep bragging. You're a soldier involved in Diatoran's national affairs, right? Willow scolded him, rolling her eyes. She didn't believe him at all. Caspian was a little frustrated, but he didn't explain further. He was Lord Caspian, who bore a high status and commanded a powerful army. If he told Willow his identity, she probably wouldn't believe him. Don't worry about Mom. I'll handle it. I'm afraid you'll do something silly and impulsive, Willow said. You'll handle it. Okay, tell me, how do you plan to handle it? Caspian asked doubtful. I have my ways, you don't need to know, Willow replied. I better handle this instead. You just stick to your work at the office. Caspian was worried that Willow would do something foolish. He thought it would be safer if he handled this matter himself. Wow, you don't have any faith in me. You look down on me too much. I could hire an expert assassin to get rid of Derek and Quentin silently. That way, no one would ever suspect I am behind it, she replied rather naively. What? Is that what you're planning? Caspian asked in disbelief. Yeah, you have to keep it a secret for me. Only the two of us know about this, Willow said, regretting it instantly. She shouldn't have told Caspian. Be careful. Don't be deceived by others, Caspian said, feeling a little dumbfounded. The ruler of Diatoran, the most powerful man, was right in front of her. Yet she intended to hire an assassin. It's all because I'm afraid you'll be impulsive and get hurt. Hiring a skilled assassin is the best way, she said with a sigh. Just forget about taking revenge, Caspian replied. There aren't as many mercenaries for hire as you think. Besides, you wouldn't be able to contact them, so it's better for you not to get involved. All right, I won't get involved then. I'll leave it to you. Although Willow promised not to intervene, she had already contacted an assassin online. Seeing Lilith die in front of her had left a nasty feeling in her. Meanwhile, Nadia York was sitting with her descendants in the York family's conference hall. Almost all of them were there to discuss their plans. Caspian is simply too arrogant. Not only did he intrude on our home, but he also caused a ruckus at your birthday banquet, disabled Derek, and injured Mr. York. He disregards the York family completely. Yeah. If we don't teach him a lesson, he might grow to be more arrogant. Caspian doesn't seem to be a simple man. He held a grand wedding last month, and many distinguished guests attended. The 5 major families in Dord City, and John Anderson, a leading military officer of South Aridlands, also came to support him. While the wedding was grand, according to my sources, the reason for such a grand occasion was all thanks to John. It had nothing to do with Caspian. Caspian saved him before, so John was repaying the favor. John wouldn't go to such lengths to wage war against us for just a common soldier. After all, they don't have a deep relationship. In the end, it's one favor for one favor. The debt has been repaid, and John has no reason to help Caspian anymore. Our family has many hidden talents. How can Caspian alone turn the tide against us? Contact people from the Office of Inspector General directly, arrest him, frame him with a crime, and kill him. Everyone began engaging in the discussion, expressing their opinions. When everyone began talking at the same time, Nadia had to make a decision herself. All of you shut up. There are still a few days left. Let the people from the Office of Inspector General investigate. Caspian's background first. Then, we'll make plans according to the situation. If he's just an ordinary soldier, we don't need to be afraid of him. As the head of the York family, Nadia had to be careful and had to thoroughly investigate the matter before making plans. Sylvia investigated the York family's network of relationships and Quentin's background, the leader of the Flying Dragons. After that, she headed to Riverside Villa. Caspian didn't want Willow to know that he had started to take action, so he quietly left the villa and got into Sylvia's off-road vehicle. "Any leads on the investigation I assigned you?" Caspian asked after getting in the car. "Yes, we figured out everything. The York family has deep connections with the chief of the South Lake City Office of Inspector General, and the York family often has dealings with the Flying Dragons. In other words, the York family is quite influential throughout South Lake City. Zachary York, the eldest son of the York family, holds important positions in both South Lake and North Lake. He has some background and power. However, in our eyes, he's still insignificant," Sylvia said. "The fact that the head of the Office of Inspector General is so close to the York family is alarming," Caspian commented. "As the head of the Office of Inspector General, how could he collude with the York family to distort the truth? He should be killed immediately," Sylvia said. "Let's not get worked up. How about Quentin, the leader of the Flying Dragons? What are his activities and whereabouts?" "A thorough investigation has been done. Quentin frequents Paradise Clubhouse every night," Sylvia replied. "What kind of place is that?" Caspian had been staying in South Lake City, but he had never heard of such a place. "It's a clubhouse located in a very obscure place in Curvytown in South Lake City, and they conduct all sorts of businesses." "That's perfect. Let's take down Paradise Clubhouse today," Caspian said coldly. "Paradise Clubhouse is guarded by many members of the Flying Dragons." "Caspian, we're also unsure about the specific situation inside. As the ruler of Diatoran, you can't afford to make any mistakes," Sylvia advised. "Although I've been on the battlefield for so many years, I've never retreated. Do you think facing the Flying Dragons scares me? They killed my foster mother. I will pay them a visit even if I must walk through the gates of hell," Caspian said firmly. Chapter 68, Head of the Investigation Team. "That might be true, but that's still the Flying Dragons' territory. As the ruler of Diatoran, you mustn't risk your life. I can handle this matter. There's no need for you to put yourself in danger," Sylvia insisted. "An eye for an eye. I must exact my revenge personally," Caspian replied. "Caspian, there's something else I need to report to you." "What is it?" Caspian asked. "I just received instructions from above. They've noticed some unrest in South Lake City lately. Many high-ranking officials here are a bit corrupt, so they're planning to form an investigation team to clean up the city," Sylvia explained. "Well, that doesn't really concern me, right? How could it not? They know you're in South Lake City right now, so they want you to be the head of the investigation team." "You've got to be kidding. Am I not on a vacation?" Caspian replied, displeased. "Why don't you consider it, Caspian? If you take it, your vacation will only end after the investigation is completed," Sylvia explained. "Head of the investigation team. You want me, the ruler of Diatoran, to take up such a lowly position? Am I going to be demoted several ranks?" Caspian asked. "How is that possible? You've achieved outstanding military merits. No one would demote you. This investigation team is temporary. Although it doesn't sound very powerful, this position will make all the high-ranking officials in South Lake City tremble in fear. Your authority will surpass everyone else's in South Lake City," Sylvia assured. "It doesn't matter. If you accept this position, and with the special privileges the country gives you, investigating Lilith's case will become much simpler. You won't need to report to anyone, and you can make decisions yourself. If you encounter uncooperative individuals, you can directly deal with them." "I can make decisions myself. I've always had that right," Caspian said nonchalantly. In fact, he already had a plan to handle it. "I know, but for your safety, they will assign some men to secretly protect you. In addition, they will send a troop to be stationed outside South Lake City under your command," Sylvia said. "There's no need for the men. With you by my side, it is enough. Too many people may draw attention," Caspian replied. "What about the troops?" Sylvia inquired. Have them be on standby outside the city for now. When I need them, I'll say the word. So, are you willing to accept this position? Sylvia asked. Is this something I can refuse? Can I go against the orders from above? Caspian retorted. I want to thoroughly clean up the corrupt authorities in South Lake City. Do you already have a plan? Caspian, Sylvia asked. Caspian briefly explained his plan to Sylvia. After listening, Sylvia was shocked. You're the ruler of Diatoran. That's too risky. If I don't take the risks, how can I lure these bastards out? The relationships in South Lake City are an intricate web. I need to expose them all at once and take them down. But I'm tasked by the country to protect you. If anything happens to you, I'll be done for. I can't bear that responsibility, Sylvia said. I've faced thousands of troops and participated in countless battles or various scales. There's nothing I haven't encountered. What is there to be nervous about? But what if? Leave the York family and the flying dragons to me. Or, with just one command from you, let's have the troops destroy them, Sylvia urged. This isn't a battlefield, so there's no way we can use armored forces here. It's easy to wipe out the York family and the flying dragons. But what about their hidden leaders? We need to expose them as well. I understand. Sylvia nodded. Well, that better be the case. We need to take this slowly and set up a grand scheme. Once they lower their guard and expose themselves, we will strike. I'm still afraid something might happen to you. After all, you're the backbone of Diatoran. Sylvia voiced her concerns. Relax. There are troops stationed outside the city, and they can intervene at any time if there's trouble. I'm just afraid that there won't be enough time. The location they're stationed at is a bit far from South Lake City, so I think it's better to have some men around you to protect you, Sylvia persisted. After all, Caspian's safety was no laughing matter. If a bunch of people are following me, my intentions will be quickly revealed. I have to do it firmly. But Sylvia wanted to say more. That's enough. I've made up my mind. Not another word from you. Just follow my instructions. Caspian waved his hand, cutting off Sylvia. Yes. Sylvia nodded. She didn't dare to disobey Caspian's orders. However, to avoid drawing attention to myself, my identity should not be revealed. If the Office of Inspector General discovers my identity, they will certainly become more cautious, Caspian said. How should we deal with that? Sylvia asked. It's simple. Have someone encrypt all my files and records. Just state that I'm an ordinary soldier in the data, Caspian suggested. Sure, I'll arrange that right away, Sylvia said. At that moment, Ezekiel Parker, the head of the Office of Inspector General, received a call from the York family, asking him to investigate Caspian's background. Without delay, Ezekiel personally began investigating the matter. After a series of searches, he found that Caspian had joined the military several years ago and was still an ordinary soldier. After learning about Caspian's situation from Ezekiel's findings, the York family finally felt relieved. Fortunately, Caspian was just an ordinary soldier, without any military rank. Equipped with that knowledge, they began planning how to teach him a lesson. Meanwhile, Caspian planned to seek revenge on Quentin in the evening. Hence, he instructed Sylvia to drive him to Paradise Clubhouse. In the evening, Zoe decided to take a leisure walk outside. Unexpectedly, when she entered a less crowded area, a car suddenly stopped beside her. Then, two men got out of the car and dragged her into the car. Zoe's face turned pale with fear. She tried to cry for help, but her mouth was taped shut instantly. She was blindfolded, her head covered, and even her limbs were bound. Chapter 69 New Blood in the Club. Zoe was terrified out of her wits, not understanding what kind of trouble she had gotten into and why she was being kidnapped. She wanted to cry for help, but she couldn't move or speak. Everything happened too fast, and that scared Zoe. After the people in the car tied her down, the car sped away, heading toward the western outskirts of South Lake City. Zoe was extremely anxious, not knowing what was going to happen next. She struggled desperately, but she had no power to resist or break free from the restraints of the two burly men. After about half an hour, the men took her out of the car. As she had been blindfolded the entire way, she had no idea where she had ended up. She could feel them descending as if she were being taken into an underground basement. As soon as the door opened, headache-inducing music could be heard from inside. Shortly after Zoe was taken in, Caspian and Sylvia arrived on the outskirts of the city. Sylvia had already obtained the specific location of Paradise Clubhouse. Following the navigation, they quickly located Paradise Clubhouse. As they got out of the off-road vehicle, they saw an entrance extending downward. Without hesitating, they walked down the steps to see a glass door at the end. The words Paradise Clubhouse were etched on the glass door. Clearly, this was the clubhouse that Quentin often frequented. The location of Paradise Clubhouse surprised Caspian. It was like a paradise hidden in a remote area. He wondered what it was like inside. The two of them approached the entrance. While the guard didn't recognize Caspian and Sylvia, he thought they were guests, so he let them through without a word. The moment the door opened, they were greeted by headache-inducing music. Caspian and Sylvia noticed that multicolored lights were flashing inside. Obviously, this was a nightclub. In the center of the dance floor, many men and women dressed strangely were indulging themselves and swaying to the music. Despite its secluded location, Paradise Clubhouse sported a luxurious interior design. Not only was the design exquisite and intricate, but all the facilities were top-notch. The ventilation was also excellent, so no one would feel uncomfortable staying inside for a long time. Normal folk were not aware of Paradise Clubhouse. Even if they were, they wouldn't dare to visit it. After all, it was a club run by the Flying Dragons, hence all its prices were undoubtedly exorbitant. Paradise Clubhouse provided all kinds of services. Most of its visitors were wealthy heirs with sunglasses as they watched the area. Caspian and Sylvia didn't expect to find such a luxurious clubhouse on the outskirts of the city. Of course, it was located underground because of its ungodly nature. There had to be shady dealings going on inside. Revenge was the main reason behind Caspian's visit. Hence, when he didn't spot Quentin around the area, he ventured further inside. Behind the dance floor was a maze of corridors with rooms of various sizes along each side. The rooms housed chaos, where members of opposite genders crowded, engaging in unsavory activities. In the corridors, guards were stationed at regular intervals, all of them armed. Caspian and Sylvia could tell that they were part of the Flying Dragons. However, it surprised them that they were illegally armed. Meanwhile, in a large room to the right, a man with a scarred face was lounging on a sofa, with several henchmen around him. This scar-faced man was the leader of the Flying Dragons, and one of the masterminds behind the murder of Lilith Quentin. Several men brought Zoe into the room, announcing, "We found a beautiful girl." "Great. Let me take a look at her. She looks rather attractive," Quentin commented eagerly upon examining her. When the sack was taken off her head, the sudden bright light made Zoe squint. She realized she was in a strange place, facing a scar-faced man who was lecherously looking at her. Zoe's heart began to race and her whole body started to tremble. She wanted to scream, but her mouth was taped shut, so she couldn't utter a word. It was her first time seeing Quentin, and she had no idea who he was. Quentin examined Zoe carefully. Then a sly smile appeared on his face. "Very good. She's a real beauty. You guys, go collect your money. Thank you." Quentin had no idea who Zoe was. The Flying Dragons often abducted women from the streets, and then used various means to keep them in the Paradise Clubhouse. After all, the club used various beautiful women to attract wealthy customers. Many of the customers were filthy rich, with too much money to spend on entertainment. Some even loved the excitement of having a new girl each visit. "She looks pretty up to my standards. I'll enjoy her tonight to see what she's like." Quentin, seeing Zoe's charming figure, wanted to take advantage of her. "Enjoy yourself. Goodbye," they said, ready to leave. "Stop right there. who will record for me if you all leave. Everyone take out your phones and record us from all angles. Otherwise, how can I threaten this girl? Quentin said maliciously. Yes, sir. The men nodded. Hearing Quentin's words, Zoe realized that she was in grave danger. She was instantly scared out of her wits. Meanwhile, Caspian and Sylvia still couldn't find Quentin despite checking every private room. Where the hell is Quentin? Caspian asked, irritated. I don't know either, but he comes to Paradise Clubhouse every night for sure, Sylvia answered. There are hundreds of private rooms here. Where should we look? Caspian said. True, it's a bit troublesome. Sylvia scratched her head. Let's ask someone, Caspian said. Just then, a burly man blocked Caspian and Sylvia's way and asked, Where are you two going? Where's Quentin? Caspian asked directly. Do you have an appointment? What business do you have with him? He asked, immediately lowering his voice as he scrutinized Caspian and Sylvia. Chapter 70. It's your fault for being so hot. I don't have an appointment, Caspian said calmly. Then you can go back. Mr. Lane doesn't have time for you. Leave, the burly man said. Just then, Sylvia pulled a gun from her waist and aimed it at the burly man's forehead. She knew that this visit to the Flying Dragon's territory with Caspian was bound to lead to a major confrontation, so she carried a weapon with her. When the burly man saw Sylvia suddenly pull out a gun and aim it at him, he trembled in fear. Enough talk. Take us to Quentin right now, or I'll just take you out, Sylvia said coldly. All right, don't get agitated. I'll take you there now, the burly man said in a fluster. He also had a gun on him, but it was too late for him to make any moves. Lead the way up front, Sylvia said. The burly man slowly turned around. With her gun at his waist, he didn't dare to make any unnecessary moves and could only lead the way. Since Sylvia and the burly man walked very closely, the others didn't notice anything wrong. Seeing the burly man leading the way, the Flying Dragon's men standing in the corridor assumed that Caspian and Sylvia were customers and didn't pay much attention. Caspian didn't want to act now. If he struck now and scared Quentin away, it would be a loss. It would be better to wait until he saw Quentin before taking action. At this moment, inside Quentin's private room, he said, Take the tape off her mouth and give her some drugs. Yes, boss. His subordinate nodded and tore off the tape from Zoe's mouth. Who are you? Zoe asked after composing herself. I am Quentin Lane, the leader of the Flying Dragons. When she heard the words Flying Dragons, she was taken aback. Though she had never met Quentin, she had heard Willow mention him before. Quentin's men were the ones who killed Caspian's foster mother, and Quentin was present at the scene. Where is this? Zoe asked. This is Paradise Clubhouse, a discreet place. Quentin didn't hide it from her, as he knew that she had no way to escape. I haven't done anything to provoke you. Why did you bring me here? She had never heard of Paradise Clubhouse, but she sensed the place wasn't legitimate when she entered. What do you think about working as a hostess here? He suggested. No way. I will never stay here, Zoe said firmly. That's not up to you. I have my ways. After we film you engaging in sexual acts, you'll surely obey, Quentin said. I have nothing to do with the Flying Dragons. Why did you abduct me? Zoe had to find a way to stall for time and see if she could escape from this place. She'd rather die than be sexually assaulted by such a person. She had never imagined that something like this would happen while she was just walking on the street. You indeed have nothing to do with the Flying Dragons, but you just had the bad luck of attracting the attention of my men. It's your fault for being so hot, Quentin said. Let me go now, or I'll call the Inspector General, Zoe shouted, struggling. Go ahead. Do you really think we would be afraid of the inspectors? Do you think they don't know about such a clubhouse? Ha ha ha. Help. Help. She had no choice but to keep shouting, hoping to get the attention of someone else. Ha ha ha. Keep shouting all you want. This is my territory. No one will care about you, no matter how loud you shout. Quentin laughed arrogantly. Help. Someone help me. Zoe was all alone and had no way to escape other than calling for help. Quickly give her the drug. Hottie, save some strength for later when we have fun on the bed. Quentin was already getting excited. One of his men took out a small bottle of liquid and came over to Zoe, intending to force her to drink it. Zoe was trembling with fear. She couldn't move her limbs, and she couldn't resist. Just as she was about to be forced to drink the liquid, a loud crash suddenly echoed through the room as the door was kicked open. Everyone in the room was startled. They turned to look at the entrance, where they saw a man and a woman walking in. Beside them, a burly man was on the ground. The two newcomers were none other than Caspian and Sylvia. The moment the burly man brought them to the door of the room, Caspian directly broke his neck. When the helpless Zoe saw Caspian and Sylvia, she was overjoyed and in disbelief. When did Caspian return? Shouldn't he be on the front lines right now? And how did a general officer suddenly appear here? Zoe wasn't aware of Caspian's sudden return, so she couldn't believe what was happening in front of her. Since the last time Caspian intervened at the gathering and held a grand wedding, her impression of him had improved significantly. She even found herself daydreaming about him from time to time. However, she was aware that Caspian was Willow's husband, and she couldn't allow herself to have any romantic feelings for him. So, she had to suppress her thoughts about Caspian, but she couldn't stop his image from flashing through her mind. When Caspian entered the room, he saw Zoe tied up and found the situation unbelievable. "Who are you two? How dare you barge into my room? Do you have a death wish?" Quentin's good time had been interrupted, so he was naturally annoyed. He had never seen Caspian and Sylvia before, and he had the final say in this place, so he had no reason to be afraid. "I am Caspian Lynch," Caspian said calmly. At those two words, Quentin's face darkened. Caspian was known for being a good-for-nothing in South Lake City, and he had another identity as Lilith's adopted son. Until now, Quentin could recall what Lilith had said before her death. She had said that when her son returned, he would surely come looking for trouble with the flying dragons. "Caspian, is that really you?" Zoe couldn't believe her eyes, thinking she might be hallucinating. "Who else would it be? How did you end up here anyway?" Caspian asked, feeling puzzled